at those days you had a ksav from the yeshiva you came from saying you've learnt a certain thing and you could now stay and learn 770. So I mentioned my zettel, I had a ksav from the thing, I was now planning to sit and learn 770. So the Rebbe tells me in that Yechidus, the summer is coming in Melbourne, and you should discuss with Hanholas Yeshiva and your father a propitious time to go into business with your father. Boom. Just like I don't know what you call it, a shot through the air.
Welcome to Homesick for Lubavitch, a podcast where we explore Lubavitch identity in the year 2026. My name is Benzi Aftzin, and I will be your host. Let's begin. Alrighty, we are here in Crown Heights with Mr. Rabbi.
Mr.'s good.
Mr. Don...
Just Don Wolf.
Just Don Wolf. Don Wolf. How you doing, mate? That's how you got to talk. I can't wait to just have a conversation with the Australian accent. It's been a while. It's been a long time. And,
I'll put it on thick.
You put it on thick. I love it. Brings me back in a way that's very hard to describe. I wanted to tell you, but I wanted to keep it for the recording, that just this week, it so happened that I was, and everything's Bashkacha Pratis, but it so happened that I was filming for a podcast in Springfield, Massachusetts, which if you've never heard of it, if you're from Australia, unless you're mechutin with someone there.
I've heard of Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, you have heard. So I'm saying it's a small town. It's a relatively small town, but it's famous in Lubavitch, I suppose, because of Rabbi Edelman.
Correct.
Right, okay, so I guess Lubavitchers do know about Springfield, Massachusetts, but my point is it's a very small town today, and I happened to be there to interview Shlomo Yaffe, Rabbi Shlomo Yaffe, who's a rav in one of the shuls there. The next morning, it wasn't planned, I ended up in the Chabad minyan in the morning, and lo and behold, there's a bar mitzvah taking place of a bacher there, of a boy that lives there, and his name is none other than Nochum Zalman Gurevich.
Okay.
A great-great-grandson of Nochum Zalman, who we're going to get to your relationship with him soon. And I went over to him afterwards and I said, I think I know why I was meant to be here this morning, because I can share with you my memories when I was younger than this boy. I was probably, 8, 9 years old, coming to Australia. I was a Lubavitcher. I grew up on Shlichus, but this was the first time I saw a chassid standing in front of our Aron Kodesh on Shabbos, davening for hours, saying Tehillim, crying, just completely in his own world.
Totally immersed. And, looking back at it, it was, I remember in a way, for you, it was that's just how it is. That's just how it is. And I guess I just went along with it. I was a little boy. But it was a really beautiful moment to share with this great grandson of his, and great grandson. And then I find out that you're in town, and your minyan was where I had this memory, and we're going to get to that soon. So okay. It's lovely to make this full circle moment here with you in Crown Heights. Thank you.
And
so my wife was Reb Nochum Zalman's oldest grandchild.
Yeah, so we're going to get to it. Okay. We're going to get to it, but I wanted to just share the beautiful the timing of it all.
Okay.
At least for me personally, it's been a very interesting series of events. Let's say. So before we begin with your story, and I'm told by those close to you. Thank you, Shaul, your son Shaul, for putting this together, that there's quite a story to be heard. I just wanted to, I wanted to thank Reuven Medalie, the owner of this place, for lending it to us for the podcast. He has a space available to rent for people that come to Crown Heights, as well as other spaces. And you can, as you can see, it's a beautiful space, and you can check it out online. There will be a link in the show notes. Thank you, Reuven. And while we're at it, those who like this podcast, please like and subscribe on the various platforms. And those who really like the podcast, please support it at hflpodcast.com/donate. Mr. Wolf, Don Wolf, Reb Don. I have to be somewhat respectful. Let's begin from the beginning. I think there's quite a story there.
How far back at the beginning are you looking for?
Which team did you barrack for growing up?
Collingwood, only Collingwood.
Only Collingwood.
The whole Wolf family is
The whole
Collingwood.
family, as far as I know.
You've had a good few years, haven't you?
A few years.
Well, it's better than all the Carlton fans. Carlton fans, sorry.
So my parents came to Australia in 1949. They were both war refugees. They lived through the Holocaust, and they married right after the war. They met each other after the war, introduced, and got married, and they came to Australia because I think Australia was the furthest place possible on earth. They could have gone to the States or Canada, and they chose Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, they chose Australia.
They chose Australia, really, because I think it was just the furthest place to get away from everything they'd experienced.
A lot of the people there were there only because that was the only choice they had, right?
Yeah, but my father made money right after the war on the black market and stuff, and he had options. But they chose Australia. He had a couple of cousins left. He lost brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, everybody. He had a couple of first cousins that survived, and they went to Canada and Israel.
And where was he from originally?
He was from Krakow,
Poland.
He was the youngest child of a well-to-do family. He was a Radomska Chassid who learned in Keser Torah Yeshivas before the war. And my mother was from Lemberg, Lvov, which was the east of Poland,
Sure.
Which is now, Ukraine or Russia or whichever one it is these days.
Right.
And they're introduced, interestingly, by one of the Krasiansky mishpacha, who was a shadchan who knew both families in different places, and he brought my mother's family to Krakow, and he took my mother to a park somewhere.
This is after the war.
After the war, and he arranged for my father to be at this place in this park, and my mother she lived through the war in an attic of a farmhouse, knew nothing. She was a totally innocent girl who spent 3.5 years in her childhood in nowhere in an attic, and suddenly this guy disappears, and my mother's left with this guy. Didn't know what. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, they met a few times and they got married quickly, and they stayed in Poland, and they took in a lot of refugees. My father had money at that stage. They took in a lot of refugees in their house, etc. My father tells me that his mother-in-law, who also survived, used to tell him, make sure that you're getting married, make sure you have one room for yourself. There were people sleeping everywhere in this place they had. Make sure you and your wife will have a room to sleep in by yourselves. And they stayed in Poland still for a while. Then they went to Paris. My father remembers when all the Lubavitches came to Krakow. After the war, the Lubavitches went to Krakow, and they made, I think, a big shelter for them, the new arrivals. And then he met the Lubavitches again in Paris. He actually met Reb Zalman Serebryanski then. I think Reb Issa. And then after being in Paris for a year or so, they came to Australia.
Right.
That's in 1949.
So just to back up a little bit to the Radomska Chassidim, did they survive as a group after the war?
No, there was not really. There are some Radomska Meisters, there are in Eretz Yisrael, some yeshivas, there is a quasi-Radomska Sachachova Rebbe, there is a Beis Medrash in Borough Park, but there's no real Radomski as such.
So the Radomska Rebbe was killed in the war?
Yes, the last Rebbe was killed in the war.
So how did that affect, I'm sure that wasn't the only concern for your father, but how did that affect his Yiddishkeit coming to Australia?
I think that, it's hard to generalize, I think for a significant majority of survivors, the Yiddishkeit was schwach for a while. Some people it was weeks or months, and others for years. So my father, as a child, that we were a very traditional home, but my father at that stage wasn't showing retirement was 100%. They did things that were convenient for them.
Right.
And it wasn't until later on when he maybe got onto his own 2 feet, etc., and he felt more comfortable with life, that he was able to resume total commitment to Yiddishkeit. But it took a while. They were very broken, and sometimes my mother wouldn't get up in the morning and ask my father, where's Mum? Oh, she'd been having nightmares at night and screaming. She saw the Germans coming, blah, blah, blah.
Now
she's sleeping.
Even though she was on the farm?
Yeah, because they lived on this, my Zayda was very clever, sold everything he had before the war, my mother's father, and he bought jewels and precious coins, and they were in camps, and he paid his way out of the camps. They were in work camps. My mother was darning socks for the Germans. They lost one sister who was taken at some stage. So they were unique in that they survived as a family unit. He was able to bribe the people in the camp, and one by one he got them out. He got into a safe house.
Wow.
So
in an actual labor camp, a German labor camp.
in German labor camp, bribed them out.
How many people got out? Very few.
She put a star.
I'm saying how many people in general got out?
She walked in a row. They meant, let's say 5 in a row. In the middle of the night, she walked as a 6th, and they had plans.
I've never heard such a story.
Yeah.
These stories are very rare.
Very rare to survive. Also as a family unit. So
Right.
2 parents and 2 children survived, and that was after the war. To see a family unit, it was unheard of. There were individuals who survived.
How old was your mom at the time?
16.
Oh, so she was a teenager.
Yeah, teenager.
So she had vivid memories of this.
Yeah, she was a teenager. They were in an attic in a barn, and they couldn't even get up. They were just lying flat for 3 years and paying off this old Polish couple. And there was like a poker game going on because the Polish couple said, we're going to tell the Germans you're here. And my dad, he'd say, fine, you told them, but you'll be killed first because you were harboring Jews. And it was a poker game to get a little bit of watery soup or something. And
For 3 years.
For 3 odd years, yeah. Summer and winter.
Wow.
So that was how they survived. My father was in a camp.
So where did your grandparents end up? I know we're going a little bit off topic here.
Yeah, fine. So about a year after the war, my grandmother got very sick, and she had leukemia. My father was bringing medicines from America, etc., but it was to no avail. So she died about a year after the war, which is tragic. Survived the war, and she died about a year after. My parents after coming to Australia, they arranged papers for my grandfather, who followed about a year or so later. So I remember my Zeta was nifta when I was about 7 or 8. So I remember him as a little kid.
So he lived with you?
He lived with us for a while when we lived in Brunswick. Then he remarried a Polish lady in Melbourne, but also a survivor, and they lived separately. But when I was already about 7 or 8, he was nifta. And there was an old man who was about 69 years old, a very old man, and he had cancer and nothing to do. But I have good memories of him.
Wow. Homesick for Lubavitch is brought to you by Yuvla Media, a boutique video production company servicing the Chabad and Jewish community. Since opening 10 years ago, Yuvla Media has pushed the boundaries of artistic and thoughtful storytelling in the community, with an insistence on there always being a memorable story as well as a beautiful and striking visual image that we believe is second to none. Over the years, we have worked with Chabad organizations around the country, as well as large organizations like Boni Olam, Torah Masora, and Atzalathon, guided by the belief that your story is absolutely worth telling with depth and creativity. If you are looking to tell your story with a video, please reach out to us at hello@yuvlamedia.com. Again, that is hello@yuvlamedia.com. A link can be found in the show notes. And now, back to the podcast. I was having this conversation with Rabbi Yafi this week, and it's, on one hand, we say, these people, they weren't religious, or they fell off a little bit religiously and so on. But on the other hand, what they lived with and the fact that they had any connection at all after everything they went through, and just their simple persistence of Judaism, of Yiddishkeit is mind-boggling. I guess that I maybe keep more halacha, or you keep more halacha than they do on a literal level. But in terms of holding on to Yiddishkeit, I mean, these people are giants.
Absolutely amazing. My father sometimes used to say that as big a miracle as surviving was and is, the bigger miracle was that they were able to marry and establish a home and live as, inverted commas, normal human beings.
Right.
That he said was the biggest miracle.
Right. It's. I mean, I know this is more. We're going to the Holocaust topic, but I see it's all connected, really, when you talk about what forms a person's identity. But the optimism and hope that was necessary for these people to see such a broken world. I mean, the horrors is impossible to comprehend, and to just say, you know what, we're going to build despite all this. You have to wonder where it comes from. I mean, and as Yidden, I think we know where it comes from, but we take it sometimes for granted with all these stories that we know, and so many of the people that we know are grandkids of these people. But then you
you get older. I'm getting older, and now I see a little bit what it's like to be a father and raise a family under much kinder circumstances, right? And that leap of faith that it takes to jump into it and to raise children and to do that against such a backdrop, it's just amazing. It is a miracle.
So clearly they were very affected, but they managed to, I don't know if they got over it, but they managed to put it aside and work things out and built a new life. They came to a country with no language, no money, no anything, most of them, and they all, Baruch Hashem, they thrived.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes.
I'll tell you a brief story,
Of course.
It needs to be recorded, about my father. He was, again, a clever young man at the war and has been Yeshivas the whole time. When he was taken into camp, now when they lived in Krakow, there was a Shabbos Goya who used to come, and with the cholent, we used to have a like, communal kitchen where they kept everything hot in a brick oven, and she brought the cholents on Shabbos to every household. She had a son who was about my father's age, and about 16, 17, and my father knew him. They played soccer a bit together with the local boys, etc. And so they knew each other. When my father was taken into the camps, this Goyish boy had a right of entry into the camp because he was a trainee priest. So he administered to people, he could go in and out of the ghetto, etc. One day, this guy comes in, and he'd smuggled in a number of small handguns. And he gave them to his Jewish friends, who he used to go into their homes with his mother, one of them being my father. My father never told me details, but clearly they used the guns. They broke out, a group of, I think, 7 or 8 guys. They broke out
Of the ghetto.
And they spent the next 3.5 years in the forests as a self-styled group of partisans.
Wow.
And they tried their hardest to stay away from other groups. They didn't have political aspirations. They weren't pro or against.
Just surviving.
They were survivors. We have to stick this out. And
In the forests of Poland.
In the forests of Poland, summer and winter, no clothes, no food, no anything. Occasionally robbed a farmhouse and got some eggs or some chicken, whatever it is. And they stayed alive for 3.5 years with rags, and in the summer lying in the grasses to evade the Nazis, and the winter and the snow. Absolutely amazing.
And your father carried this kind of, you felt that he carried these scars? Or
He definitely carried the scars, but he got on with life, and he built a business, and he became a Rosh Kol and a shul, and he didn't sit there moping around.
Wait. Rosh Kol and the shul after he became
in
more
Melbourne,
frum again?
in Melbourne already.
After he became more frum again? Or this was even
This
more
wasn't a
traditional?
Balebos shul, it was a half-half.
Right, so he wasn't really upset about Yiddishkeit.
He wasn't upset about Yiddishkeit, and I don't remember, he always was maniach tefillin, etc. I remember his tells him he'll always davened at home, put on tefillin and davened every day, no doubt. But the other things with the Shabbos, they were a bit lax in those days.
Well, it's very tough to be a frum Jew. It's tough to be a frum Jew.
It was tough in a new country, you didn't have any to make a pronos, so it was life was difficult.
Right.
But later on, I think that Baruch Hashem, his kids were growing up, and he decided it's time to, get back to everything.
So now we have a little bit of an understanding of where you were growing up. What was it like?
Well, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. One thing.
Yes.
This Polish boy.
Oh, yeah.
Fast forward 40 years. My father sitting in front of a TV watching the news. They had just, what the word is, coronated what it is, the new pope. And my father looks and screams to my mother, "Run here, come here, look, Vladek." This Polish boy, his friend, became the Polish Pope, Pope John Paul.
John Paul. So his friend was there on the screen. No. The friend himself was
The friend
a Pope.
himself, 40 years forward, whatever it is, this is Pope John Paul.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
John,
it was actually quite, if you look at his stuff, it was pretty good for the relationship with the Jewish people.
Very much so.
But he, mamish, saved Jewish lives.
Very much so. He was, I think, the first one to basically apologize for some of the stuff that went on, right?
Yeah. So I had to get that story out.
So Pope John Paul was your father's friend.
My father's sort of friend, acquaintance, let's say, and he gave him a gun to use.
Wow. Talk about a small world. All right, I didn't have that on my bingo card. All right, so you're this boy growing up in Australia with survivor parents, clearly traditional. If your father's involved in a shul that way, and and so on. But which school did you go to?
Manscopus College.
Manscopus. Was it the same as it is today?
No. I had in my class...
Today it's considered Reform or something.
No,
right?
no.
Not
Today
even?
it's officially an Orthodox school and and it has Jewish studies. It would have 95% non-Frum kids. In my time, I would say you'd had about a third Frum kids.
I see.
In my class alone, my year level, we had more than 1 million of boys who went to daven in school every day. We had 1 million, etc.
I see. So Mount Scopus was basically the first school? No, there's Bialik, right?
Yeah, Bialik much later. Mount Scopus was formed first.
First.
Yeah.
So Mount Scopus before Yavne...
The founding principal was one of the Feiglin family. Avram Feiglin, Abe Feiglin.
Okay.
So he was the founding principal who was there for 30, 40 years.
So it was the community school
It was a community school. It was officially Orthodox school.
I see.
So he wore a yarmulke and teachers wore yarmulkes. I'd say maybe a quarter of the boys wore yarmulkes all the time. Yeah, I think in class they had rules. You had to wear a yarmulke. I don't remember all the rules now, but it was a different feel because the kids were the children of Holocaust survivors in the main.
Right.
So it was more Hamish sort of atmosphere.
Right. So that was the community school. It wasn't like you went there as opposed to another school. That was a Jewish school.
Yeshiva hadn't, or maybe it just started with a few kids. Yeshiva came a little bit later.
Right. And Yavne and all these.
And Yavne much later. Bialik much later.
Yeah. I remember my only memory of Scopus was that we beat them in the soccer competition 5-1. I think it was Scopus that we beat 5-1.
There were times in later years where they allowed shluchim in on Erev Shabbos, etc. As a boy, I think when I was reading Yeshiva Gedolah, I went to speak there once at the Scopus.
In Yeshiva Gedolah.
When I was in Yeshiva Gedolah, I went to Scopus. I was invited to come and speak to kids.
Okay, so before we jump there, so you're growing up in Scopus, and you mentioned that Lubavitch starts opening up. Just for those who don't know yet, I don't want them to wait all the way to the end to find this out. You became very, very involved later on with the Chabad Yeshiva schools. Besides being a Lubavitcher yourself, as everyone can see, you became very involved with Rabbi Groner for many years. I forget what your position was.
I was on the board for many years.
For many years.
I chaired the board for the last 10 years.
Right, for many, many years. So we'll get to that. But you ended up being very involved. But here you're boy in Scopus, Mount Scopus School, and you mentioned that the Lubavitchers opened up a school. Take me back to when you were a boy. What did you first did it register like that there's a Lubavitchers here? Did it mean anything to you? Was it like when you first saw them, was it strange?
I didn't come into contact with Lubavitchers till I was maybe 17 years old.
Okay.
So we lived on another side of town.
Right. So you didn't live in East St. Kilda?
Didn't live in East St. Kilda. We lived as the Jews originally lived in Carlton and Brunswick and Northcote, those sort of northern suburb areas. I was there for 10 years. Then we moved to Kew, which was another side of town, for another 10 years. And then we moved to East St. Kilda.
Right.
So I didn't get in contact with, I didn't see any Lubavitchers, know anything about them until I was about 16, 17 years old. My father had met occasionally Reb Zalman and Reb Nochum Zalman, etc. I think my first time I came, my father took me to a Yutes Kister for Brengen, I remember. I was maybe 15, 16 years old, and he introduced me to Reb Zalman and built a little bit of a relationship from then.
What attracted your father to, they came to him to fundraise?
I don't know they came to fundraise, but I think he occasionally liked to come around, or again, he had met Reb Zalman, I'm sure, in Paris, and he liked them. He had a genuine liking, and Rabbi Groner was makar of him as he was most probably 5 more years older than Rabbi Groner, but they had a sprach.
They did have a sprach.
I remember the Rabbi Groner knew all the Polish Rebbes and knew all the Polish Hasidim. He davened in Reuven Medalie in Bronzeville, and he knew everybody. So
well, he himself comes, I think, from a Gera family.
It wasn't a Gera family, but
the Baumgartens were a Gera family, I think.
Yeah, but he knew all the Polish
Rebbe. They come from a family originally, no?
Yeah. So they had a good, sprach about all the Polish stuff, etc. And Reb Zalman also had a wider than Lubavitch understanding and knowledge of various Rebbes and Tzaddikim, etc.
Right. So how did that lead you into getting a? You said you.
So when I finished school, so I was about 17 years old, I was going to go to yeshiva. The question was where.
Oh, so you were going to go to yeshiva.
I was going to go to yeshiva. We were quite frum by then.
I see.
And I was thinking of going to Eretz Yisrael. Some of my friends were going to Eretz Yisrael. And I don't know if my father or someone suggested, why don't you look into Melbourne? So I discussed it with Reb Zalman, and our decision was to try in Melbourne, see if I'm happy there. And if I'm not happy, then I'll go later on to Eretz Yisrael.
What was your impression of the Yechidus of Farbrengen that you first went to? Like, was it pulling you, or
it was an eye opener. It was a Farbrengen. It was like a Balebos sort of Farbrengen style. Later on, they were dancing. I remember dancing with other guys, etc. So it was a whole new ball game for me. It opened my eyes to a different sort of Yiddishkeit that I hadn't been exposed to.
But it didn't pull you in a way where you're for sure going to the Lubavitch Yeshiva.
No.
Not
at that stage.
Another kind of experience.
Another experience, yeah, of a different type of religion.
Right. Oh, you felt it was that extremely different.
I felt it was different, yeah.
Right.
To what I was used to as a more normative, let's say, modern Orthodox shul.
So you go to this yeshiva and you're basically doing it as a trial.
Yeah, I mean, I was putting my effort in, etc. And Baruch Hashem, I came at a time where the Rebbe's second set of shluchim, Bachrim to Yeshiva Gedolah, were in yeshiva. That's the label Altine, Zalek Rifkins, Herschel Grimbergs of the world, etc.
Herschel Grimberg, who's in Buffalo now.
Yes, and the label Altine, you'd be aware here.
Label Altine, sure.
In Borough Park and
sure.
Zalek Rifkin, New Orleans. So a whole 6 shluchim of those. There's only 6.
Right.
They were handpicked. These were the best guys Lubavitch had.
But they get a little bit of short shrift because everyone knows about the first set. But for you, the second set's all that matters.
Yeah, I didn't know the first set at the time.
Right.
I came just when the second set came. So they were wonderful, and they helped me a lot integrate.
How did it strike you as an Australian boy? How did you see them?
I saw them as somehow different and superior in a sense, but there's a whole lot of boys who came in with me. I wasn't a yochid. A lot of boys came either from Yeshiva High School and from non-Jewish schools. So I had friends like Yossel Loshak, Oliver Shalom, was a shliach there in Santa Barbara.
Sure, I know his kids. Yeah.
Yossel Gutlik, Shlomo Bendit.
Yossel Gutlik is your age?
Yeah.
Shlomo Bendit I met a month ago or so.
Some of the Fagelin boys in Australia, that we all came in the same group intake. So, you know.
And some of them were from Scopus and some weren't.
No, they weren't from Scopus. They were either from Yeshiva or from other schools. There was nobody else from Scopus, but from other Goyish schools as well. In those days, it was a melting pot. So Yossel Losher came from a Goyish school. Ephraim Schmidt, another one, came from a Goyish school.
Right.
But there were guys who were interested in Yiddishkeit or already been learning a bit, so they felt motivated to take at least a year to learn in Yeshiva Gedolah. And then some of them went on to university after that.
Right.
That was a popular sort of derech.
Uni.
There was for Brendan once, Mendel Futterfass came to Australia a few times, I think twice that I recall, because he had a sister. Reb Zalman's wife was his sister.
Sure, they're my aunts and uncles.
Okay. So he came a couple of times. And I remember vividly from Brendan in the old Yeshiva Gedolah, it may have been at the crossover of the second and third shluchim, both sets were there. Well, for Brendan in the old Yeshiva, and the whole topic of the Farbrengen, Mendel, that night, was that Yeshiva Gedolah is a sandwich, meaning a sandwich. He was told by Reb Zalman it's a sandwich between school and university. So the whole topic was a sandwich.
Well, but it's the spread in between the sandwich, isn't it?
It's the real spread. It's the jelly in between.
It's the jelly in between.
So I recall the Farbrengen went a whole night, and at some stage he wasn't allowed to take mashka. So he would ask Rabbi Groner, Rishus, as the Rav, to pass, he could take mashka.
Why wasn't he allowed to take mashka?
I don't know, he was ill, he was not well, or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It was a Mendel. And at some stage, Rabbi Groner went home, 2, 3 in the morning. So Mendel would go, there was a payphone. Nobody had, it was before the days of phones. I'm sorry if you understand that.
Yeah, I'm old enough, yes.
So we went to a payphone in the lobby. He would take a bochel to ring Rabbi Groner's home and gebet Rishus from the Rav to Zogan L'chaim. So at some stage, Rebbetzin Groner pulled out the plug. There were no more 3, 4 a.m. phone calls.
Yeah, that's funny. This year marks 75 years since Yud Shvat and the first Basi Legani. If you're looking for an event that is memorable, meaningful, and affordable, let me recommend This World is a Garden, a film and live concert production created by us here at Uvla Media, inspired by Basi Legani, the first mimer the Rebbe said. If you're a regular here at HFL, you know that Basi Legani is something that we think about and talk about a lot. And in this production, We used the power of cinematic filmmaking and a live concert by a string quartet to bring the beauty of Basiligani to your community and your audience in a way that they've never seen, heard, or experienced it before. The production has already been hosted by Chabad houses around the country and has drawn wonderful reviews. Our package comes with everything that you need to put in the production: the film's original arrangements for string quartet, publicity materials, everything besides the string quartet, which we recommend that you hire locally to save on travel costs. To find out more about this production, please visit thisworldisagarden.com. Again, thisworldisagarden.com. And now, back to the show. How did these people, like, Mendel Fotovass, of course, a lot better known in the general Lubavitch public, but Zalman Serebryanski, I was saying they're my uncles. My grandfather, Ram Shem Tov, they were his actual uncles.
Yes,
they're my great uncles. And my grandfather told me a number of times that he was super close with his uncle Zalman Serebryanski. He said that when Zalman left France to go to Australia, he remembers crying as a boy. It was very, very close to him. And so, for most of us, we haven't heard that much about him because he kind of fell off the map. How do you remember this Reb Zalman Serebryanski?
Reb Zalman was the wisest of people. And I think he had a little bit of a political bent. There was stuff that I didn't know as a bocher between him and Rabbi Groner, and the Rebbe sort of had to demarcate areas for both because there was a bit of a Rabbinish going on over there. But Reb Zalman was an educator par excellence. He was so wise and clever, and he would just cock his head to a side and think about it and wouldn't answer straight away and come up with a few wise words, etc.
He spoke English?
He had a very good vocabulary, strong accent. When he came, he was running the school originally, and I heard it said he read every book in the library at that stage, maybe to improve his English, but more importantly, to make sure what was kosher and what should be thrown out.
Huh.
So his vocabulary was excellent. You'd be amazed at the words he could use, but you had to listen, you had to get used to his accent. And he had people from all over town coming to him. He had people from the Hasidic Adas community coming for Shiurim to learn with him some Hasidus on the sly that nobody should know about it. And he had a huge impact on my generation.
Was he like a worldly man? Was he like a chassid that did he, Mendel has this kind of mythology around him, like that kind of story of waking up the Rav to say L'chaim at 3 a.m. That sounds like a Mendel story. Yeah. Was Reb Zalman like that, or was he more like a Balebatish person who you...
He appeared more Balebatish, and he dressed, his daughter-in-law, Nechama Werdiger, made sure he had proper suits and he looked respectful. In those years, he still...
That's his daughter.
His daughter.
Right.
His daughter, you're correct. So in those days, he still wore didn't wear langer rekel. He wore a suit, a long jacket, and he always looked neat. If he took some mashka, he can get a bit wilder.
He would take mashka?
He would take mashka, yeah, and he could get a bit wilder and upbeat. But otherwise, he was very just wise and sage-like. And he used to learn in Chassidus. We used to learn with him. And when he finished Shemaima, and we thought we'd go on to something else. Okay, let's learn it again. Let's learn it a third time. He had an amkus, a depth that we learned to appreciate.
And he taught in the yeshiva?
He taught in the yeshiva, and then he took over Yeshiva Gedolah. So the Rebbe later on said, okay, you go into Yeshiva Gedolah, Rebbe going to run the yeshiva, and you'll be in charge of Yeshiva Gedolah.
He ran the Yeshiva Gedolah?
He ran totally. Gashmus of Aruchnius for many years.
Wow.
He collected money at night time, and he was there the whole day. He'd pick up, he'd make you feel terrible because he'd walk around and pick up paper, rubbish from the floor, and everybody cringed. The Reb Zalman has to go and pick up papers from the floor. He would do anything and everything.
Because what strikes me about the Chassidim in Australia, I know you mentioned in passing your father meeting Rabbi Isser Kluvgant in France. His grandson, Rabbi Moshe Nu, spoke about him on the podcast. One of the earlier episodes, very fascinating story as well. These Chassidim were, in many ways, it wasn't the war anymore. They could technically travel to New York, but in those days to travel to New York was a very, very big ordeal.
Right.
and so in many ways they were kind of on their own in this faraway country, very little communication, very little going and coming between the main centers of surviving from Yiddishkeit. They were off on this different continent. And so to me what's striking is like, how did these Chassidim operate in this kind of in a way almost self-sufficient way? Like, you're seeing this fellow Reb Zalman Serebryanski or Bisser Klufgant, and they're living, a lot of them, their kids didn't marry Lubavitchers. I think that's
there wasn't anyone to marry.
Right. If their kids were going to stay there, they were happy if they married a frum Yid.
So just today, I think, is Levaya in Melbourne, Thursday, of Reb Mendel New,
right,
who was a son-in-law of Reb Bisser Klufgant.
Right. Well, Moshe spoke about it.
That's okay.
And he spoke about how he grew up, and they in the beginning they didn't give Chol Yisrael, and how his grandfather dealt with it. It was a very fascinating conversation. So that's why I'm thinking about it now. You talk about a fellow like Reb Zalman, living in this essentially continent separated by an ocean. What was that like?
I think Reb Zalman in particular, as the Menal of Mostus, had a very rich letter writing experience with the Rebbe. So some of his Zeinechlach have tens, if not hundreds, of letters that Reb Zalman sought to get advice from the Rebbe on many things he was facing, etc. And some of those are published. Many of those are published, but not all. So I think those days the communication was via aerogram. If you remember, even I got letters from the Rebbe that were folded up pieces of blue paper.
That does make me feel young.
To cheapen sort of the postage, etc., and very thin paper. So it was via aerogram, or the Rebbe used to send telegrams for Yom Tovim, for Yudis Kislev, Yudshvat, a telegram to a Nasha, one line, two lines.
But how did you make sense of him? I guess in a way I'm asking a question of how did you make sense of the Rebbe? Like this fellow is a chassid. A chassid of whom? He's on a different continent. He's thousands of miles away. What does it mean for you as an Australian boy meeting this man with a big beard? What does he represent to you? What is he a part of?
I think that you saw straight away the total bittul that the Hasidim had to the Rebbe, number one. Whether it's Reb Zalman or Rabbi Groner, etc., you knew and you felt and you heard that there was a total subservience to whatever the Rebbe's Horos or the Ratzon of the Rebbe was. So that's something we grew up with. I think that was something remarkable about Melbourne, that we had these Eltra Hasidim who'd gone through the Russian times with the Frierdiker Rebbe, etc., and they'd sworn allegiance to the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe. And the fact that you couldn't just get on a plane and go to the Rebbe, I think most people tried to go every 1 or 2 years. And it could be like half a year's salary or something in those days to fly, and it took a long time. The first time I went, you had to go through Hawaii and to LA and through Pan Am, and it was just, took forever. And you wait 7 hours in LA so you can get the next boarding flight, etc. So it took forever. And it was expensive. But you felt that these Hasidim were the real McCoy. They were the real thing.
Right.
And so, they had such a strong connection to the Rebbe and what they had heard from the Rebbe, the way they understood what their role was, what their shlichus is. They were strong and they managed to stick it out, despite many, many hardships. And you read again some of the letters from Reb Zalman or even from Reb Arel, his son, and then Rabbi Groner I was involved with a lot in my more mature years, and saw some of the correspondence and the setlach and the answers for difficult situations that he got from the Rebbe. They were absolutely bottled to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe stood strongly for them.
Right.
Sometimes when Rabbi Groner got into trouble or whatever it is, and the Rebbe was on the line there for him. The Rebbe was... When Sydney opened a yeshiva, Rabbi Feldman opened a yeshiva at some stage, and I'm talking about, it's probably about I'm guessing, mid-late 70s, I think, or maybe even 80s. So in those days, Sydney's boys used to come to Melbourne, Yeshiva Gedolah. That was the normal. The people, they would learn in school in Sydney, and they, at Yeshiva Gedolah age, they used to come to YG in Melbourne. And we had many, many Sydney boys through the yeshiva. At some stage, they wanted to open their own yeshiva. So I heard the story that the Rebbe told Rabbi Groner, ring up Yitzchak and ask him what he thinks. So Label told
Yitzchak Groner, his brother.
So the Label answers the Rebbe, is doch Mitternacht. The Rebbe says, so what? So Rabbi Groner gets the call in the middle of the night. He answers, and half asleep he understands if the Rebbe is asking him for his response, of course, yes. You know. So even though, what I want to say is the Rebbe was mechashev, he knew this will affect Melbourne negatively. There'll be Sydney boys won't come, they'll stay in Sydney. But the Rebbe, had a way of dealing with his people as much as he backed them, and that he sort of protected them in a sense.
That's very interesting. The way you're describing the closeness that you can only see from distance. Like there's a certain impression that's left precisely by the fact that they were not close physically, that they were in this faraway country, and you still sense that they have a connection to something, to someone who lives on the other side of the world in a way that leaves a deeper impression or a different kind of impression than someone who basically, jets off to the Rebbe or drives to the Rebbe every week or so. Very interesting.
Yeah, it becomes a more meaningful experience in a sense.
Right. So then how does that compare or contrast for you when you see these Bachrim that come fresh out of the oven of 770? Was something jarring about that? You go from, because I'm thinking like, a chassid who lives on a different continent, yes, he's writing letters, but in many ways, the Rebbe becomes the Rebbe that he remembers, right? Like he didn't see the Rebbe yesterday or last week, and so there's the Rebbe of his mind. There's the Rebbe that he conceptualizes, and he's staying in touch with via letters. And we have this with people that we know as well, friends that we communicate with, but we don't see each other. We kind of base them on how we remember them, and then we meet them, and we're like, we have to update. We have to update it a little bit.
But in a way, if you have I won't say lahavdil, but in normal relationships, you have a best friend, and you haven't seen that best friend for 10 years, and when you meet them again, you sort of click in, and you straight away go off as if you've seen them all the time. Because if they're a best friend, you're so close,
right? You
just click back into your relationship.
Yes.
So I think that in those days, you may not have seen the Rebbe so often. We occasionally got tapes from Farbrengens. So you had to wait till the tape on the reels was sent over and it got to Australia, and you'd stay up all night listening to the reels, etc.
They would stay up all night in Yeshiva?
The Bachrim, the Shluchim, yeah.
If you waited all this time, why not wait till the morning?
Nah, come on. It came now. You got to listen to it now. It's fresh.
All right, fair enough.
So there was a certain depth and closeness that maybe may not have been there under other circumstances.
But would Reb Zalman come and listen to the tapes as well?
No, I don't think so. But the Bachrim.
So that's what I'm saying. That to me is a contrast. Right. That like Reb Zalman, the Rebbe's in my heart. Like I don't have to run to the tape. The Bachrim, they're coming from a world where you have to be up to date. The Rebbe is like this constant kind of presence. So that's what I'm asking. If the day like, was it jarring in any way? Not in a negative way, but more it was like, wait a second. It's not just like this. There are people who are also like this.
Yeah, I think you clearly see there are different ways of slicing the cake, and people have different relationships depending on their age and where they're up to in life. But that's good. That's good for a person's chinuch. We don't want to be monotone, and it takes many things, and different people appreciate different approaches. So there's no one approach for everybody. So some people like this, some people like something else. So I think it was good for one's upbringing to see these divergences.
Right.
And there were times where the Bachrim might have not appreciated the Reb Zalman outlook and faket, I
was about to ask. Do you remember instances of that?
I remember in my time still in Yeshiva Gedolah, the government had a program where they delivered to all the schools milk, chalav stam. So Yeshiva College also used to get these crates and crates of small bottles of milk. And that was just taken for granted. There wasn't chalav. We didn't have chalav Yisrael.
Right.
There were some people who had some Lubavitchers that went to a farm that got chalav Yisrael. It wasn't pasteurized, but in the school, etc., it was just normal milk. Right. There was a Hasidic Farbrengen, if I'm not mistaken.
Wait, so the yeshiva would serve the milk to the boys who ate chalav akum?
Yeah, and nearly everybody did.
Right.
It was a rarity not to. So there was a Verbringen, I think it was a Shabbos Vorchim, and I remember Aaron Laser Zeitler, Oliver Shalom.
He was part of the second group?
He was part of the third group, I'm thinking.
Right.
And he got shikah, and he was screaming, and he was crying, and he was a gebrente fire against Reb Zalman Groner, the works. He took on the world, and he won.
He won.
He won. So, Chassidish Verbringen kann auftan, Kemelchen kann nicht auftan. So, from this point on, we didn't take the government milk anymore.
The boys decided they didn't want it?
The school. Reb Zalman and Reb Groner decided, that's it. Okay, no more Chalav we're going to Chalav Yisrael only.
Just 1 second. You have this Lubavitch Yeshiva with these shluchim from I never heard this side of it. You have these shluchim, these like Fabrenta 770 Bakrim for a number of years in the yeshiva with these Lubavitch-ish boys, some at different levels, and the cafeteria is serving chalav.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an interesting setup. With the Bakrim were wearing...
It's interesting when you look at it now retrospectively, but then it was just a normative condition.
Right, but for Lubavitch Yeshiva, it's interesting. Were you guys wearing hats and jackets? You weren't wearing hats and jackets.
Yeah.
You were
I was in Yeshiva Gedolah, and we learned with it by day in the premises of Yeshiva College.
I see. So that's where the milk was coming to. The milk was not coming to the Yeshiva Gedolah?
No.
Okay, so it was the Yeshiva Ketana.
It was Yeshiva Ketana.
To these kids, and the Yeshiva Ketana famously had many children who weren't even frum, weren't even religious, even in my days when I learned there. So that's what was going on. The Bachrim in the Yeshiva Gedolah though
there was no Chalav Akum in Yeshiva Gedolah. No.
And was there were all of you guys who just came in from, like you said, the different schools, you all came in, you had to wear a hat and jacket?
Nobody forced anything upon anybody.
But were you all looked apart right away?
In various phases, with a different color yarmulke or a different hat, but yes. Some people maybe didn't wear a hat straight away. It took time. I don't remember if I wore a hat from day one or not. I don't recall. But in over a period of time, one acculturates.
Right. No, so the boys that were in the yeshiva were considered themselves like full-on Lubavitchers, or that was up to you?
It's up to you.
Up to you.
Most of them became full-on Lubavitchers, but not all. Some people wanted to keep their individuality. So I remember one night Reb Zalman Serebryanski about a bocher who was going to go to a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. I think it was called Torah. So that night's Verbringen was the mile of Limrat Torah, and wherever you go, you should steig in Torah, etc. The next night was Rosh Chodesh. So Zalman Serebryanski again in Yeshiva Gedolah, right? And the whole topic of Verbringen was Ashreinu Matavcha Kainu, Lubavitch, Nishkin Polish Chaser, etc., etc. The whole Verbringen, the opposite of what he Verbringen the night before. So
it was an interesting time. It's an interesting time. So what are you making out of all of this? You had come to the yeshiva for you said for a year to try it out and see what's going on in your mind as you're spending this year?
Maybe it took me half a year to get into the proper swing of things, to appreciate what's happening. I was very happy with what I'm doing. My parents were very insistent that they wanted me to go to university, which I wasn't really so mindful of and didn't want to do so much, but I decided to go to university, and then Baruch Hashem I became a university dropout within half a year, and I really wasn't happy there. I didn't think it was for me.
Because of you wanted to be in yeshiva, or because you didn't like university?
Bit of both. Must be a bit of both. So I dropped out of uni and I cleared it up with my parents, and I went back to Yeshiva Gedolah for another year and a half or so. And then I came Elul and Tafshin Lamed Aleph to the Rebbe for the first time.
For the first time?
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Out of this world. It's fantastic. But it was going to be a little bit more than I bargained for, because at my first Yechidus in Tishrei, in those days you had a ksav from the yeshiva you came from saying you've learnt a certain thing and you could now stay and learn in 770. So I mentioned my tzedel, I had a ksav from the thing, I was now planning to sit and learn 770. So the Rebbe tells me in that Yechidus, I'll paraphrase, but the Rebbe said that the summer is coming in Melbourne, and you should discuss with Hanholas Yeshiva and your father a propitious time to go into business with your father.
Really?
Boom. Just like I don't know what you call it, a shot through the air. So I was rather mavulv. I was very, didn't know where I was. And Rebbe said a few other things, and I came out of Yechidus, and Reb Zalman Serebryanski was there. And I was close with Reb Zalman. I was talking to her. Oh, Agili Mumaila, dus gemeint.
I remember Reb Zalman.
He was prone to his pilus.
Yes.
The Gili da Asalian. So I went back to Melbourne after spent the rest of Tishrei, went back to Melbourne after Tishrei, and that was must be 3 months before the summer. I spoke with Reb Zalman, I spoke with my father. So, and at the summer break, after the summer break, I started working.
Wait, so you had planned to come for more than Tishrei?
I planned to stay and learn. That was the plan. You had to start from the Melbourne Yeshiva. You could come and
that was your plan, to stay for at least a year?
Yeah.
And you understood from the Rebbe, basically go home and work with your dad?
In no uncertain terms. And about a year and a half later, when I was a chosen, I came back. About a year and a half. It was the Yud-based Tammuz time. And you can't ask a question once the Rebbe's told you something. But I put in my settle that, Rabbi Groner's given me a few offers to work in the Moistus and do various things in the Moistus. And I'm very interested in it. And I don't see the sense in what I'm doing at the moment and working. And the Rebbe was absolutely negated that idea and said, I have to be in business. And that I'll say in Yiddish first, das, was du kannst tun in ein Jahr, kann ein anderer nicht tun in 24 Jahr. This that you can achieve in 1 hour, another person can't do in 24 hours. I took that to mean my involvement in the Moistus, etc. And the Rebbe spoke to me about Kfir Sitim L'Torah. It has to be a Kfir Sheb'nefesh, and I have to learn every day. But the Rebbe was very determined that I should remain in business and work in the Moistus sort of out of hours.
How do you make sense of that all these years later? Did you ever get a further explanation from the Rebbe of why he was?
No, I didn't get any further explanation. I understand because I did sort of work with Rabbi Groner for 30 odd years together in the Moistus, and in those days our board looked after all the Moistus in Melbourne, apart from Yeshiva Gedolah, which was separate, which was Zalman territory. So we had everything under our jurisdiction, and for 10 years then I sort of chaired the board and we really ran the place. So I took that was the Rebbe's bracha, that was the Rebbe's intent, that I, sometimes I guess if you can't, what do they say, you can't see the forest because of the trees. Maybe had I been involved in the Moistus, I wouldn't have seen a bigger picture, etc., I don't know. And I had the time and the possibilities and the ability to administrate and run Moistus, and Baruch Hashem, we built many buildings, we took thousands of kids, where Melbourne, Chabad is a big place. It's sort of a normative Judaism in Melbourne.
No, it's amazing. I'm sure it's much, much bigger than when I remember it. I haven't been there now for 25 years or so, but even when I was there, it was one building going up after another.
Right.
It was the new elementary school building, there was the new hall.
Yeah. So we've got more buildings and more kids.
I'm sure there's more.
And then the community's grown. So on the Yeshiva Melbourne campus, there's 3 major minyanim on Shabbos. There's the main shul still, and there is Young Yeshiva, which has like 100 kapotas, and there is Dominion.
Right. That's your son-in-law?
My son-in-law, Moshe Khan. He has maybe at least 100, 150 people on the Shabbos and big kiddush, etc., attracting maybe slightly different element of people, Lubavitchers and non-Lubavitchers.
Right.
So, it's a lot happening there.
It's so interesting.
And there are other Chabad houses and a lot of other things.
Right. It's so interesting, this story. I've never heard that kind of story where a bacher comes, and it wasn't like you were older or something, that you worked another year and a half before you got married.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe basically tells you, this isn't the place for you right now in yeshiva. Go and work for your father. Very interesting. Was it hard for you at the time?
It was hard to accept for a little while. I think it wasn't on my...
That you're missing out on the whole year of Fabrengens and 770, that whole life.
So I don't know if that was so hard because I hadn't really experienced it as yet.
I'm sure you heard about it.
I heard about it. I was there and I'd been there Tishrei. It was fantastic. So, but I think it was just more the surprise of the hurrah to go do something very different to what you had in mind. So, of course, you accepted it, but it was difficult to fully integrate.
Right.
At the time.
Right. So, it's funny because sometimes people see, like, the hard thing would be, the Rebbe tells me that I have to learn and give up my business. And here it's the other way around. Like, it's hard for me to go make money.
Well, the beauty of our times was, I was, Baruch Hashem, very lucky to have a clear Hira.
Right.
So, it is as if you have to think about what is it, and I'm not knocking opening the Igros or anything else, chas v'shalom. But you're in the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe's telling you black on white, this is what you're going to do. So there's no shayla about it. There's no, Rebbe told me, jump into China. I'll jump into China.
Yeah, but that's a point. It puts a lot of, people say that they would, right? People say that they would, and a lot of people did follow what the Rebbe told them, but it's not necessarily so easy to do that. You could talk about it all day, but here, the Rebbe's telling you, there's no wiggle room around it. It's very obvious what he's telling you. But it doesn't necessarily make it easier, right? It doesn't. I mean, the fact that you went along with it shows that even though you hadn't grown up in Crown Heights, this is the first time. It's also the first time you're meeting the Rebbe, right?
Yeah.
You're meeting him in the Yechidus, and it's just, it's basically, if you're coming to the Rebbe because if you're looking at the Rebbe from how you want it to be, this is absolute disappointment, because right, you want to be around, you want to stick around, but if you're looking at it that you're there because you appreciate the way the Rebbe sees it, it's a different story.
That's right. So you're having both feelings at once. There is an element of disappointment because it wasn't what I was thinking I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Right. At the same time, it's an element of clarity, which you appreciate more later, maybe. At the time, maybe you don't have that clarity, but you appreciate as the years go on.
Do you think your father had sent in a letter asking?
I'm most probably, I assume so. I didn't know for a fact, but my parents did have a few Yechidus with the Rebbe, and I know.
Oh, they had come in themselves?
Yeah. My parents had been by the Rebbe a couple of times.
They had come to America to see the Rebbe?
Yeah.
That's why they came here?
Not so to see the Rebbe, but once they were in America, they had, again, my father had some first cousins in Toronto he'd gone to visit. My brother for a while was working, he's an older brother, he was working as a Hillel director in Madison, Wisconsin, and then in Hofstra College.
Was this your brother
Long
Label?
Island, Label, yeah. Before he worked for Chabad, he worked for Hillel. So maybe in around that time, and my parents had once had Yechidus, and talking, I think, about university, about going to university and learning, etc., university. And the Rebbe quoted some statistic to them that, I forget the percentage, but only a small percentage of people finish the course they started. And they change their minds, they do other things, etc. So the Rebbe was sort of saying, people have in mind to study this, study that. They change their minds, people do other things.
Right.
My parents walked into Yechidus. My father comes from a Hasidic background, my mother not. And so he had told my mum, this is how you act. You don't talk, stand up, etc., etc. So they walk in, and the Rebbe asked the mother to sit down. Mum didn't sit. Second time, sit down. Mum didn't sit. So the Rebbe tells her in Yiddish, either you're going to sit or I'll have to stand. So my father told her to sit down.
And he stayed standing?
He stayed standing, but my mother sat down.
Huh, fascinating. Fascinating.
The Rebbe knew his clientele. The Rebbe understood and saw through how and what the person is and their background and everything else.
Right.
You couldn't, you walked into Yechidus, there was no fooling the Rebbe about anything. There was clarity.
How would you describe, if I ask you to remember in the eye of your mind, how would you describe the walking in, the room, just your impressions?
You waited many hours before you walked in, and a bacher would go in around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. It wasn't, you were there from, I don't know what, from 10 o'clock already. You'd been to the mikveh and you hadn't eaten the whole day, and you're up into the next morning and you're waiting around, you're saying Tehillim, and you knew the moment you walk in, the Rebbe's got to see through you. So whatever is within you going on in your mind and your heart at that point in time, the Rebbe's got to know about it. So you tried your very best to be pure in thought and in deed and in mind, and to be on a sort of a keli that the Rebbe should see you in a good light.
And what
surprised
you most once you walk in through the door? Because this is all your anticipation. What surprised
you? Simplicity of the Rebbe and his room and his desk, etc. Although I once had a Yechidus. Now I started publishing as a bocher a little bit of a to call it a magazine is much too optimistic. It was like a little journal, paperback, very cheaply produced. This is back in the 70s.
They're back now. They're called zines.
Okay.
Zines.
So I called this thing Hamayon, and it was aimed at sort of at college or high school youth. Interesting articles. We wrote locally. We borrowed stuff from Yiddish Haim, wherever was available in those days. And I sent a copy in of each one to the Rebbe. So
this is while you're in Australia?
From Australia. So I did this myself, and we put out a number of issues every 4 months or 6 months, whatever it is, with articles. And I wrote some articles, etc. So one of my Yechidus, I walked in, I think I was already a chosen then. I walked into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe has a copy of this Hamayin on the desk, because they were all bright colors. It was very simply produced, but we did it on a colored cardboard. So I think it was a bright green, but it's sitting there on the desk. So the Rebbe starts talking about Hamayin, and he says, it's a really good thing, etc. Now you should think about doing it in other languages.
What language was it in?
Pardon? It was English.
English.
And you should think about changing the name, because there's another Yarchon in Israel which uses the name Hamayin. So maybe think about changing the name, and maybe think about doing it into different languages. And I was just, and it's sitting there on the Rebbe's desk when I walk into Yechidus. So you see how everything was bashkacha pratis and organized, etc., and simplicity. And the Rebbe, reading my title. Now I write very small. Unfortunately, I don't write. I'm left-handed. It's my excuse. So I don't write nicely. And I tended to write very small. And that night in Yechidus, the Rebbe wore glasses, and he takes a magnifying glass.
Really?
Yeah, and he's reading because then I wrote a zettel in, etc., and he's reading it and talking to me. So I was a bit abashed that the Rebbe has to take a magnifying glass as well as using his glasses. But,
the first Yechidus.
I don't know if it was the first or the second. I don't remember.
One of the times he's reading the letter with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
But you were surprised by the simplicity.
Yeah.
It hadn't matched what you expected.
It was just different than I. The Rebbe's eyes are piercing, etc., and he's reading and he's just talking and he's telling you A, B, C, D, E, and not long Yechidus, maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes.
Plenty, it's plenty. And the Rebbe was telling me what to do, how to do. Especially on my second Yechidus when I was a chosen and I had an office from Rebbe Groner, and I thought that I could sway the Rebbe with this sort of argument, and the Rebbe just wiped the floor of it.
He wiped the floor with you.
Of any suggestion of me working for the Moisters,
which is what you wanted.
Yeah.
And he was emphatic in the Yechidus. He was
absolutely emphatic.
Emphatic. How was it said? Was it said with a harsh? Did it feel harsh to you?
He just said that, as I said to you before, that this is your role, but you can achieve as much more than somebody's got to work at this 24 hours a day, and you have to have kvisis in the Torah, and just on a different wavelength in a sense, but a positive hurrah on a different wavelength. So it didn't attack negatively what I had wanted to do, just showed me there is another path, and that's the path you should take.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about. You're talking about being a chassan and getting married. Your wife is a granddaughter of Nochum Zalman.
Yeah, oldest granddaughter.
What was that? What was that like to get into that world? Did you have anything to do with him beforehand?
Yeah, because in Yeshiva, he was a part of the furniture of being in Yeshiva.
Was he a fundraiser? What was his role?
Yeah, so he started some knitting business and he was doing a little bit of collecting on the side. In the end, he became the biggest fundraiser for Yeshiva.
Yeshiva Ketana? Yeshiva College?
Yeshiva College. Yeshiva Ketana. and Yeshiva Moistus for everything, for the schools. He collected more than Rabbi Groner. Then they did together. It was a love-hate relationship. This was the Russian old guard, and this was the American, and they used to argue and scream, but they loved each other. Zayda really loved Rabbi Groner, but he didn't see the same way. They could argue and etc. And they used to split up the Gvirim, and he was had a lot of chayin. I heard from Mulik, his son, that they were leaving Paris. So we saw...
Mulik is your father-in-law or your uncle?
Mulik is Reb Nochum's son, Mulik Gurevich.
So your wife's uncle?
My wife's uncle. He's still alive. He's just turning 90 this year, Mitzvah. When they were leaving Paris, Rabbi Yisrael Noach gave Reb Nochum a bracha that he should be moitze chayin in everybody's eyes. He should find favor, and that's what he was. He had a way with people, and very heartsick and very emotional, and he would run to every levaya in town, and he would visit every almana and sick person in the hospital, and he said, tell my shviga, make me chicken soup, give me a challah, I have to go visit this person or that person. And he was loved around town. He would ring up the big gvirim in town, and he knew there's only a little office in Yeshiva Shul he worked from. There was no big offices in those days, and he would ring up the gvir, but of course he had to go through the secretary. So you heard him on the phone, darling, I must see him. It's very important. It's very urgent, darling. Give me an appointment today. He sweet talked and brought presents for all the secretaries. That was the way to get into the office, etc. So he was a real character. And he sat till him the whole day, and he had many car accidents, and this was...
he had many car accidents.
Many car accidents till the car was taken away.
We have the sirens here, full Hollywood production. So first of all, I have to thank you for in retrospect, for all those minyanim that I spent on Shabbos.
Right. So I've run a boys' minyan for 30-odd years.
How did that start?
I didn't start the minyan. I definitely didn't begin it, but I took it over at some stage, and I grew it, I guess. And we were always, I don't know where we davened in your time. We were sort of moved from premises to premises to premises, from this kindergarten to that kindergarten.
But there was a time that there was a mesifta that was taking shape
in the flats or something.
No, it was like underneath. It was maybe called the flats. The where you go underneath the building towards a girls' school on the right-hand side.
Okay, that was already modern times. That was already the Masifta. Okay.
And then before that, there was like a few houses, weren't there?
Yeah, there were some houses, some flats
on the other side of the side of the.
And we were in various kindergartens, field, right? And there were always machlokes, and it wasn't left the way it should have been, and always problems.
Oh, so the flats, you mean the houses on the other side of the.
But we had, apart from boys, you mentioned Reb Nochum Zalman used to daven in there quite often. I remember.
Why did he come there?
Just to
machazik?
No, I think just his own peace of mind, or he felt he could do what he wants there, sort of thing, and sit and daven. And Reb Zalman for a few years davened with us. He was an Elter Chassid. He was the Talmud of Lubavitch, and he would lane for us sometimes.
What was his name?
Vilshansky. That is
the father of the Vilshansky brothers.
The Zayda.
The Zayda. He lived in Australia.
He lived in Australia. He was in Melbourne, and then he went to Sydney for many years. Then he came back in his older age back to Melbourne.
Yeah. So Rabbi Gurevich, he lived to Nochum Zalman lived till, 25 years ago?
Something like that.
No, I was there 25 years ago. It must have been less than.
The oldest Nochum, my nephew, is probably in his late 20s, maybe about 28 years ago or so.
No, can't be. I'm 30. I'm 38. And I remember him. Okay, so something like that.
So
he was one of the
original families.
But he was one of the last.
One of the last. Yeah, I don't remember quite the order. Yeah, there were the Althauses and the Serebryanskis, Gureviches, Klufgant.
Did they get along as this Russian clique that you're describing?
I think so.
Did they get along?
Yeah. They might have not seen eye to eye and everything, but they got along. They were a clique amongst themselves.
Right. How did Rabbi Groner fit into all of this? Because you brought that up a few times, and you had a special relationship with him.
I think it was difficult, especially in the earlier years.
He came after them, right?
He came after them, and they understood on the one hand they needed somebody more polish and more language to sort of run the place.
And younger,
and vibrance, etc. And Rabbi Groner had all those pluses plus more. At the same time, a different mentality.
Right.
They were Russian. They were brought up in Moscow. They weren't peasants. They were brought up in Moscow. When they came to Australia and they went to Fagelin Farm in Shepparton, they didn't know what hit them. They didn't last so long on the Fagelin farm. Moshe Zalman Fagelin had visions of building community in Shepparton, and they had to nail boxes and pick fruits and all sorts of things, building a whole community there. This wasn't a life for them.
They were urban.
They were urban people.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it took months, etc., or maybe up to a year, and they moved to Melbourne. They couldn't stay in Shepparton.
Moshe Zalman was a Lubavitch Chassid?
Yes.
And he had come before all of them.
He had come in, I think, from Metula, from Eretz Yisrael in the maybe turn of the century or something, a long time before.
So he was excited that they're coming after the
Very
war.
excited.
He had a whole idea.
He had a correspondence with the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedecker Rebbe. There was published letters, and he wanted to bring these people over. So the Friedecker Rebbe acceded to it, but I don't think ever the plan was to be housed in Shepparton.
So he was trying to be like a kind of Kfar Chabad in Australia.
Yes.
And the Russians, they wanted no part of it.
No. What didn't last for that long.
Oh, that's funny. So as Rabbi Groner comes, how does he fit into all of this?
I mean, I wasn't around. I was a little boy. I don't exactly know how it started, but in my times there was a working relationship between them all, and they were all on the one side. But along the way, there were many hiccups, and many differences of opinion, and many arguments, and many wild Verbrengens, etc., because it was difficult. They just were in different wavelengths many of the times. But the Russians could see what Reb Groner was achieving, what he could achieve, they couldn't do.
Right.
So, they all, in the end, with the Rebbe's assistance in carving paths out for people, it all worked.
Right. I remember Rabbi Groner very well. He was a very unique man.
It was larger than life.
Larger than life. You felt that even though you knew him.
Yeah. He could do anything and everything. He was a kol yochel.
Right.
He was a very talented person, a big London. I'm sure had he not been a head shliach, he could have been a big Rosh Yeshiva or something, giving shiurim.
Right.
Huge, knowledge and very quick mind, agile mind.
A chazan.
An orator, anything you like.
Right. A prescriber of mashka at night. That story is amazing. So, what as if we're following along your story, you're married to Nochum Zalman's granddaughter. From what you're describing to me, it doesn't sound like it would have been that shocking to have him in your life. You had these different figures around in your life. It wasn't like
you came. And I was working, so I had a shiur in the morning at the back of shul with a friend of mine, Oliver Shalom, Tzvi Ainsworth, who died in Surfside, Bell Harbour, yeah. So we still in the morning Yechidus. We were both working as Bochrim already.
And he was also from Melbourne.
He was from Sydney.
Sydney.
But he lived in Melbourne. So we're learning the back of shul. So such is the nature of Reb Nochum Zalman. He sees us for a few weeks learning. He says, okay, I'm here. I'm part of the shiur. That's it. Here I am. So that's whatever mitzvah was going, Reb Nochum was there. If you're learning a shiur, Reb Nochum's there. If there's a daf yomi going on, Reb Nochum will go there. If whatever, a mace mitzvah, Reb Nochum for sure is there. He's part of every, kol davar shebekdusha, Reb Nochum is involved in it and he's part of the story. Whoever bought an illa, a psicha for an illa or something for, in those days, maybe $10,000 or something, Reb Nochum's there. He'll be a shutuf, He was involved in anything and everything.
So you had already gotten to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like it was much of a shock to you. It was like this, chassid being your wife's grandfather. It seems like you were pretty involved at that point. But you're firmly now inside the Lubavitch community from multiple angles. You're working with your dad. How do you start getting involved with Yeshiva College?
I think some years down the track, they were having some building problems on a particular project, a school building. And I was approached by the then president, Dovid Groner, Oliver Shalom. Listen, we're having problems. We're a bit out of our depth as to how to deal with it. Can you have a look and advise us? So I was involved in that and helped solve the problem with the architect and the builder and everybody else because I was in the building industry.
Oh, your father was real estate?
Yeah, real estate and building. So, and from that, at some later point, I was invited to sit on the on the board of the yeshiva.
Did you realize then? Was that like the moment that you realized, okay, this is why the Rebbe sent me?
No, I don't think I realized at that point in time. No, but took some years for that realization to kick in.
Right. And what did you learn about Rabbi Groner and Lubavitch as a moisid as you get more involved and get more inside?
I think you have to learn and develop a sense of getting along with people. So you run your own business as I do. I can decide, here I am in America for a month, I'm taking off 4 weeks and I'll work on my phone as I need. When you're working on a committee with other people, you have to have a lot of give and take. And you have to end there, say, and Shavuos. Everybody thinks differently, everybody has different backgrounds. So to be successful, you have to be able to listen to other people, understand where they're coming from, and try, in a sense, to compromise and find middle paths that you get most people on board with. So it's easy to, it's no sense in arguing about every little thing. You've got to somehow get along with people, find what's important, what do we want to achieve out of this, and sway others to head in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, that's ultimately the definition of the work of the klal, is that you lose that independence that you have otherwise. But from a more Lubavitch vantage point, there's always, or there can be sometimes, this innocence that someone has from the outside. The shluchim, they're doing amazing things. Everything is beautiful, because shluchim, or people running this maisis, will put up a very brave front, right? And every organization has to do this to some extent. There's a PR, what people see about it, and then there's the actual reality of it. What was it like for you? And I think sometimes when people traverse, going the outside to the inside, and they find out how the hot dog is made, they're like, wait a second, this doesn't seem as holy as I thought it was, or as perfect as I thought it was. What was it like for you to go from being a bacher in yeshiva, working with your father, learning in the back of the shul, kind of doing your own thing, and enjoying the Chabad presence from the outside, and now you're on the inside, and like you said, there's a lot of negotiations.
I mean, you learn about people's characters, but we had a role. We were sort of sitting on top of a whole lot of moistness, and it was about sharing assets. Money's coming in, where they're going to go. Everybody's screaming for an extra $100,000 for this or that and the other, and making sense of it all, and having priorities with Rabbi Groner as to what our priorities were at that point in time, and how we could help out all the moisters to achieve what we thought was reasonable to achieve. So it's a matter of balancing a lot. So you're dealing with the individual and the menalim and the staff, etc., who want to be paid more and more holiday pay, etc. But you've got to that's got to be mitigated by the realities of life.
Exactly.
And if there's no money, I'm sorry, we ain't got it.
Right. That's basically my question. My question is not to get into the politics.
Yeah.
The politics and that stuff is not unique to one or the other organization, and it's just life. And I don't find it particularly compelling. Yeah, people are people, and if you look hard enough, you'll find something ugly if that's what you're looking for. My question more in the Lubavitch world is Lubavitch moises, Australia even, really any moises, but Australia is a very good example of it. There's a utopian, or I don't know the word utopian, but it's very idealistic. We're gonna transform a community. We're not just gonna run a school with a balanced budget, which is how every other school in the city is operating. We're going to run a school, a tight ship. We're going to have a balanced budget. Everything's going to be beautiful. The Lubavitch is always thinking about, we need to have more kids. We need to have another moisid. We need to do this. We need to do that. If we're, I'm sure Rabbi Groner's getting phone calls from 770. You have to do this. You have to do that. And so there's this utopian, or whatever you want to call it, very, very idealistic way of approaching things. But like you said, at the end of the day, it has to be paid for. And there's at some point, especially when you have more buy-in from people in the community, and it's not just a rabbi or an independent shliach making decisions,
and it has to be accounted for by other people, that's where I feel like sometimes, and I'm not just talking specifically about Australia, I think in general, a lot of Lubavitchers struggle with, how do I hold on to idealism and also be responsible about it?
With difficulty. I think that Rabbi Groner was a strong and a leader and looking to expand as much as possible. Sometimes was his board, myself included, had to hold him back a little bit to say just not going to work for whatever reason. At the end of the day, we understood Rabbi Groner was the shliach. We were there to assist. So if he felt very strongly about something, he said it's got to happen, we agreed it's got to happen, whether we had the money or didn't have the money. Most of the time, we integrated, worked very well together. As he got older, he left more and more for us to do, as he sort of cut back on what he was able to do. But we had a very strong and close working relationship, and we saw eye to eye 99% of the time. And in my times, it was a matter of how we're carving up the pie as to resources and as to monies and growth. And Besrivka was angry because Yeshiva's getting this and we didn't get that. And 2 years later, you have to make it up to the other ones. So it was balancing priorities a lot. But we had excellent menahalim who were also dedicated shluchim. And I think at the end of the day, everybody sort of was bottled to the cause, even though your characters and personalities get in the way sometimes. But I think most people were able to bury that to an extent in order for the greater good.
Right. What I'm thinking about as you're talking is, I've also, not to compare, I haven't been involved in the scale of this kind of organization, not even close. But I was, working. I grew up on shlichus. I spent a few years after I was married on shlichus. There's a way that world looks at money. Money is. It's all about, is there enough money to do X, right? The idea comes first and money comes second. Whereas in business, yeah, of course you need to have a vision and ideas, but ultimately money has much more of a say, has a bigger seat at the table. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes.
So what was that like for you to go from, the Rebbe told you to be in business. You grew up with a businessman father, which also shapes how you look at money and the importance of money and how where it fits into the hierarchy of things. How did you make that? How did you see the Lubavitch way of looking at money? What did you find it to be cynical or like frivolous?
No, I think clearly the ideas and the principles and the aims took priority. And yes, we have the ideas, now how we got to do it, and then the money's secondary.
Right.
And I remember Sichos from the Rebbe speaking about how Moishe should never have money in the bank. You've got to owe the bank. You never have idle money sitting around.
Yes.
Because that means you're not utilizing what you could be doing.
So the Rebbe did say that, right? It's not my imagination.
No, 100%.
And did Rabbi Groner operate that way?
Yes.
Money.
So, he had these chayvus on him. So, every fortnight was payday for 100 staff, and he was short of money. So he has to go ringing around Melbourne, I need 10,000 and 20,000, I need to pay these teachers. Yeshiva always paid, in my time, most of us in Melbourne always paid the staff. We were big schools and big staff, and you had to pay on payday. There was no, I don't want to use this badly, but there's no New York mentality of the staff can wait for 3 months and be 3 months behind in their pay, as some masters do. So yeah, everybody had to be paid on time, etc. There were times maybe we couldn't afford. There used to be a holiday pay loading in those days, I think of 17.5%. You had to pay extra for the times for the holiday summer. So we didn't always have money in the bank for that.
Wait, 1 second. What does that mean? You had to pay in the summer?
You had to pay with a 17.5% loading. I don't think it exists anymore. So
what does that mean?
Extra. You have to pay extra.
For like overtime?
Yeah, not for overtime. It was part of their package that you had to pay extra.
Oh, was it a legal
funds.
thing?
Yeah, legal thing.
Uh-huh.
So we didn't have always money for that for the summer. The summer's very hard. People are out of town. No one's there. Hard to ring up for somebody to get money. So sometimes we owed that loading for a few months.
But was it hard for you as a businessman to go from running a business where everything is about, you need to make sure there's money in the bank and money is like a real thing, to go, and then you go to a meeting at a Moised
and they're talking about empty bank accounts. Was it at all?
No, it was just like a different business. You have various business experiences, and this business ran on different lines a little bit. No, it wasn't hard as such, but you have to sort of again. You have to bridge expectations and dreams to the realities of life.
You felt that was your role?
I think that was part of my role, and I think I had a good relationship with the Medalie Amoistus, and they understood I valued them, and I think they respected me. Being also the Lubavitcher Chassid, that I wasn't just an outsider coming in and telling them this is not the way to do things. So I think we worked very well together, and we had to have the dreams and the aims, but we also had to make sure in some sense that we could pay our way. And there were times when we got into trouble. We had a very big crisis around the 1990s, etc., and the bank was taking everything away from us. And we
really,
yeah, there was sort of a recession time in Australia,
right?
And the
you're talking about the late 90s,
yeah,
the Asian crisis,
early 90s,
before the Asian crisis,
yeah, early 90s. And the bank was taking us, going to sell us up and get rid of us, etc., which they most people wouldn't have done, but who knows? So anyway, we cut a deal with the bank, and we had to raise, I don't know what it was, $2.5 or $5 million within a few days. And we did it. Reb Groner was at the helm, but we, got the money on the table and got rid of a lot of debt and cut a deal with the bank. But it was hard times, difficult times.
Right.
So you go through your ups and downs. There are times where everything's beautiful and wonderful, and there's times where you can't sleep and you're pulling your hair out because you can't pay teachers tomorrow.
Right.
So we all felt it as a very real responsibility.
It seems like you need both. Right? Especially when you're talking about moistus, because I suppose the other difference between businesses and moistus is that a business can only survive and will only survive if the money works out, if the money makes sense. There isn't really, besides some very few instances, there isn't really a reason to maintain a business if it's losing money, or if there's no promise of making money at some point, right? Even if you have investors and venture capital, the idea is eventually it's going to make money. Otherwise, what's the point of this business? Whereas with a moisid, it is because of the idea. There's a belief that something that's not quantified by money, like the education of a child, the importance of bringing this child into school, even though his parents don't necessarily care to pay for it or are able to pay for it, that exists regardless if you can pay for it or not. And so even in a world that's more practical and more pragmatic, if you don't have those dreams and those ideas, you're going to miss out on things, right? You cannot... If Rabbi Groner was to take a approach to these mices like a businessman would, I don't think the mices would look the way they do today.
Agreed. So part of your role is to sell your dream and your vision to other people.
Right.
You need buy-in from people.
Right.
They should understand the importance of whatever you're doing in your programs and your chinuch and etc. They understand the long-term importance of it and open up the checkbook.
Right. No, my point is only that you need to have the dreamers.
Yeah.
You need to have those people, and those people sometimes, because of who they are and the way they think, they are going to on their own go off the deep end. And there needs to be a give and take, especially if something's to last and succeed. But for people that get very practical and go into business and everything has to make sense, it's not you can't boil everything down. You can't fit everything into that box.
It's always a question of balance. So I remember hearing a story. I don't vouch for its accuracy, but I assume it's correct. That Reb Shlomo Kunin once got into very big trouble, and he came to the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe. The Rebbe had said you have to do A, B, and C, go beyond, and etc. And the Rebbe answered, "Aber fort mit der cheshbon." Notwithstanding that I said you have to do it, but it still has to be a balance. A cheshbon has to make sense.
Right.
So, we just came from Purim. It says, Zavot chayv adam l'bsurim Purim ad deloy yada. So one of the teaching in Chassidus is ad deloy yada. That even in a state of loy where you're flying, there has to be an element of yada. There has to be an element of sensibility and practicality, and it has to make sense even in the world of loy yada.
And that's the hardest thing.
Yeah,
it's the hardest thing. It's easier to be on one of the sides. To do both is in a way harder. So just to sit a little bit more on this relationship with Rabbi Groner, did you feel that with time Rabbi Groner became more practical and kind of limited or constrained by reality, by the reality of finances, or did he stick with this kind of idealism throughout?
No, I think he stuck with his idealism throughout. But it's a guy who, if you start a little corner store once upon a time and you sold a bit of everything, and it grows and grows and grows, becomes like a supermarket. And the guy who is originally in control, he can keep doing it. And if he's no longer there, you need 10 people to run the business because it's grown so much. So Reb Groner grew and grew and grew the business, as it were, and boys' schools, girls' schools, seminaries, kindergartens, all different moisters happening, and Chabad houses. So he continued to grow, but the task and the management of it becomes larger and larger. So it's harder he didn't lose any of his, I think, push and drive. And it was any hurrah from the Rebbe, he was going to follow through 100%. But the practicalities are there in an ever-increasing form.
Right, but what do you think animated him all these years later? I mean, he lived many years.
He was the Rebbe's man. And the Rebbe had told him a few times, and he told him, to his face, that Rebbe had many difficulties, and he was despondent at times, and he was Moirish, and he, was bursting. But the Rebbe always strengthened him and was mechazik him and backed him all the way. In a personal sense, in certain community issues, and if the Rebbe Groner wasn't a Merkish then, Rebbe Groner was a personal shliach of the Rebbe. I don't know how many people were like that. I can't tell you. Maybe Gershom Mendel also originally, I don't know.
Bro Baumgarten in Argentina.
Okay. So there are only a few people.
Right.
So if Rebbe Groner heard that America sent out checks or something occasionally to shluch him, he would ask the Rebbe, "Where's my money?"
What about me?
The Rebbe would send him. The Rebbe sent him.
Yeah. No, he's definitely one of a kind. If I could ask, do you remember how he reacted to Gimel Tammuz?
Disbelievingly. And he said that no one should, in the first hours, etc., no one should do any signs of Avelis or Yeshiva, to wait 24 hours. And he was, I think people did not want to, again, you're far away begashmias, you're not seeing it. I think people did not want to accept a new reality. So even if you told me that this has happened, let's give it 12 hours, let's give it 24 hours. Maybe it's got to change. Maybe supernatural things will occur.
Let me use my distance to my advantage.
Yeah. I think we all took it very tough. And in a way, it's maybe harder being distant because you're not physically experiencing what people are experiencing. So I would say it was disbelief.
But how did it, once
in the
once,
community and as a community?
Once it settled down, once the 24 hours passed and it was real, how did you see it affect him? How did it affect him going forward? I ask this not to make you a biographer of Rabbi Groner, but in this question of idealism versus pragmatism, there was this. When the Rebbe was alive, the very idealistic world, and it continued after also, but certainly when the Rebbe was alive, we have to build and build, and we're going to bring Mashiach. And at some point, you realize that things weren't exactly the way you thought they were. And did that at all change the way that he saw, I have to make sure this Ma'aseh is going to last? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't know that I saw or perceived a difference in the way he was involved or ran the moisters, and I think he wouldn't let Gimel Tammuz affect him in that sense. No doubt, in a personal sense, he was hugely affected. His whole metzius was being a shliach of the Rebbe. That's what he was. He was a personal shliach of the Rebbe, and he constantly in touch with the Rebbe on many, many things, moisters and personal stuff, whatever it was. So I think it was, for him, a huge blow. At the same time, being shliach of the Rebbe, I think he says to himself, my shlichus is unchanged, and I've got to keep my end up.
So he was going full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead. Although noting that he's getting older, and full steam ahead was less than maybe he used to do once upon a time. In his heydays, he would have like first minyan in yeshiva or the school minyan, work 10, 12 hours in the office, go home, have shiurim with Balebos at night time, phone calls, shilas. He was the Rov, he was the Shliach, he was the Kol Yochel, understand?
Right.
So, I mean, clearly as the community grew and other people came into be, he could do less.
Right.
He was getting older and he had ill health, etc., on a number of different levels.
Right. You've been through. You've been around the Australian Lubavitch community for so long. You've seen the different stages, the first group of Chassidim, Rabbi Groner's with the transformation that he created in the community, the Meisters. You've seen it up close. All those people that we've discussed so far have passed away. And it's a new era, like as it always is. It's always changing. For the children growing up in Australia today, that they don't see so much the transplants from the old world of Russia and like you did, or even from America. They have their own grown homegrown community. Do you feel like they're missing out on something? Do you feel like they don't need it? How do you see it? I'm sure you have grandchildren there.
I'm amazed at the conviction and drive of young shluchim, wherever they may be. Many of my children are on shlichus. I have grandchildren already on shlichus, and they never saw the Rebbe in person. And I'm amazed at their hiskashros and their drive and their motivation. I can't figure it out. I don't know how it is and why it is, but it's definitely palpable and really there. So if I see some of my teenage grandchildren in Melbourne and they're into Yechidus and Mivtzoyim and they're running around the whole day, it's just amazing. So this is in Melbourne, far away, the other side of the earth.
Do you sometimes think that maybe it's your role now to be the Reb Zalman and the Nochum Zalman?
I don't see myself like that at all. Maybe others see it differently, but I'm not I don't consider myself a mashpia.
But were all of them mashpia? All of them.
No, it's true. Reb Zalman was a mashpia.
Yeah, I understand. Reb Isser Klufgant and all this.
No. I mean, I do in my little way. I have to deal with a lot of people, and I try my best to. I do a bit of, mentoring and other things and counseling. I think it's very important that we all have to see ourselves as role models. So there's no better chinuch in life than a dugma, than being a role model. So whatever you're doing, and even if it's driving a car and stopping the car to let some lady cross the road, I think that's important because people look, oh, it's a beard, a frum guy, wow, interesting. I think that whatever we do, we have to be mindful we're affecting other people. So we can all be positive role models in so many different situations for Yidden and for non-Yidden. We have to be an Or L'Goyim as well.
Or L'Goyim. Yeah, an Or L'Goyim. Yeah. So as someone who spent many Shabbosim in your minyan, and I remember it fondly to this day. I'm sure I was one of thousands of boys to cross to enter those doors. That definitely left an impact on me on some level, and these stories remind me again and again that those people, when they were doing their thing, I don't know if they realized or thought of it as they were trying to impact you, but they did, and we're talking about them today. And we think of it as exotic because they came from Russia and they had this and that and the other. But I'm sure in some time people will think of all of us as exotic as well in some other way. And what really connects people is these moments of candor and care and humor and connection. And that's what lasts. Ultimately, that's what lasts.
I'm reminded in the early Lukutei Sichos, the first four volumes, there's a story the Rebbe says about some bochrim who are American shlichus somewhere. They're running around trying to sell books, and they weren't very successful. In the meantime, the Rebbe gets a letter from some old lady who's peering out a window and sees bochrim with tzitzis and reminds her and has an impact on her. And the way Taka weren't successful selling the books, but this lady, he's seeing two bochrim in some hick town running around with tzitzis, and this, had an effect on her.
Right, and that could be me, and that could be me, and in your case, that was you to me, right? And you didn't even remember. Like I was somewhere in the summer. I was filming something. I was driving on a project. I stopped by a certain young man to film him for a project, and while I'm filming him, I was there for an hour maybe. While I'm filming him, he's talking to me about dating and shidduchim. Whatever, I gave him my 2 cents. Not that I'm some kind of expert on it or coach or anything. I gave him my 2 cents as I'm sometimes want to do. And, a few weeks ago, he reached out to me. He's like, by the way, remember you told me such and such? I'm like, no, I don't remember at all. He's like, well, I took your advice and I'm engaged today. And we're talking here about these things and these stories that happened decades ago. And we're also looking forward. What are the young people in Australia growing up with today? My guess is that they're growing up with things similar to what you grew up with, encounters that you probably take for granted.
I think the challenges are much greater, and I'm glad I've brought up my children. As of a year and a half ago, I've married them all off, and it's up to my kids now. But I see the challenges they have with their children. It's a tougher world, and I think it's only harder.
Nice. So that's why they have people like you to be an example.
Hashem gives them all the koiches, no doubt.
All right. On that note, thank you very much for doing this.
It was beautiful reminiscing with you.
Yes, it was. It was very nice to see you, and it's nice to be here with you while you're celebrating different simchas. Mazel tov to Shol, a beautiful simcha, and you should have many simchas.
Amen. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
The music for this podcast comes from the album Repentant Doors by Oren Tzor and Nadav Bachar and is used with their permission.